an interview process for general counsel jobs is very different from the interview process for in-house counsel roles. So in this video, I am going to walk you through what you can expect in terms of the recruiting timeline and the interview process in general when you're looking for a general counsel job. Welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Annie Little. I'm an ICF certified coach and former lawyer, and I created this channel for lawyers who are looking for practical guidance on how to land, lead, and succeed in the legal profession and beyond. All right, so we're going to start by talking about managing your expectations. And I think this is important to talk about first because, like I said at the opening, the GC hiring process is unlike any other in-house counsel type hiring role and really any other type of lawyer interview process. So the timeline is much longer. From your perspective, it will probably be about 4 months, but just know that it's been at least a month or two in the making behind the scenes before you're even brought into the picture. And yes, the process may seem slow. 4 months can feel like a really long time, but just for perspective, there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of people's schedules that need to be coordinated so they can have you talking to the people that need to talk to you. And while this process is ongoing, you do not want to be hounding whoever your contact is. Usually it's an internal recruiter or an external recruiter, but don't hound the recruiter. You can certainly ask for updates and reiterate your interest, but they don't have a whole lot of control. Like I said, there's a lot of moving parts. And in the same vein, don't try to circumvent your contact person. Don't try to circumvent the recruiter. They have been tagged by the company to handle all of the communication with you, so don't go around them and make a mess of the process. And yes, during this long process, there will be multiple rounds of interviews. In my experience, the minimum would be 3 rounds, but you probably want to plan on more just in case. So speaking of interviews, let's talk about the GC interview process. Now, unless you're going up internally in your organization to the GC role, you're probably going to be dealing with some kind of recruiter, whether it's a recruiter that's internal to the company that's hiring or an external, like executive search firm. So they're going to be your first round, it's usually called a screening interview. And you just want to make sure that you know your resume forward and backward and that you're confident and that you're projecting executive presence. This is also your opportunity to learn about the role to decide if it's something that you're even interested in. For starters, I want you to keep in mind that because there aren't a whole lot of general counsel positions just in existence, that in many instances you would need to relocate. So make sure that that's one of the first things that you're asking about, whether or not you can stay where you are, if it's in your locale, or if relocation is expected. Another very important question that you should be asking is, why are they hiring? And this could be they're replacing somebody, or perhaps this will be their first ever GC role. In any case, you want to understand why that role is empty. And then just ask some other basic questions like, who does the GC report to? What does the legal department look like? How does it fit into the overall organization or corporation? And just any sort of other questions you may have that are going to help you decide whether or not this is a job that you want to pursue. Oh, and also remember, I was talking about how you should never go around the recruiter, right? You should not circumvent your contact, even if you know people in the company. So if you do know people within the organization, this recruiter screening interview is a great place to let them know who you know in the organization and they can work things out from there. All right, so once you make it past the recruiter screening, you've got your first round interview or first rounds, because these can they have the same spirit, but it's basically any interview or interviews that you have before you would be talking one-on-one with the CEO. And the key to your first round interview is to prepare. Prepare, do all of your due diligence, do a deep dive on this company, because you are going to want to let them know that you understand what their company's about, what the needs are, how they're doing, how they fit into the larger industry. So do not skimp on this. So you're going to want to be looking for all publicly available information. So you can start, just navigating the company's website, looking up the bios of anyone you might be meeting with, especially executives. Make sure you're reading industry blogs and articles so you know what's happening right now, and so you can see where the company fits into the broader industry, getting a sense of who their competitors are. If it's a publicly traded company or a nonprofit, there are going to be some public filings that you're going to be able to check out, and that would include like financial reports. And you may also find some analyst reports that you could take a look at. And you can read their annual report, press releases, check out their marketing, really get a sense of who this organization is. So in this first round, which the first round may include many separate little interviews, you will likely be talking to people in the legal department, but you will probably also be meeting with people on the business side. And so you're going to want to make sure that you're tailoring your responses and your interactions to the audience to which you're speaking. Also, I have had multiple clients who have been asked to give a presentation to the business side and some of the legal as well. So that can be a possibility. All right, once you have cleared the first round of interviews, next they will elevate you to the interview with the CEO. So when you get to the interview with the CEO, odds are you are a finalist for the GC position, probably one of two, maybe three. And really what this interview is about is you and the CEO deciding if you would be a good fit to work together, because odds are you are going to be working with the CEO very closely. And for them, they want to find somebody that they can view as a trusted advisor and even a business partner. And from your perspective, you want to find somebody that you feel good working for and that you can respect and get along with. The next interview after the CEO, if it goes well, they're going to move you up to interview with at least one of the board members. And in most cases, they're just going to be kind of probing your understanding of corporate governance and like business best practices. They're going to want to know that you have a demonstrated history of dealing with challenging ethical problems, and that you know when is an appropriate time to raise certain issues up to the board level and which issues don't need to be brought up that high. All right, next, let's talk about what you should be asking in these interviews, like all of these multiple rounds. You should be using these as an opportunity to learn as much about the organization and about the general counsel role as possible. And this is just a way for you to kind of have a cheat sheet for what they are going to want from the general counsel. And from there, you can decide if that's something that you want to do yourself and that you're capable of doing. So one way to gauge what their expectations are, you could ask something like, what would a successful general counsel accomplish in their first year? You're also going to want to find out what characteristics they find important for their general counsel to have. And a great way to ask this is to say, what characteristics make a general counsel successful in this industry? And because every law department is set up differently within an organization, you're going to want to ask a lot of questions about how their legal department is structured and where does it fit within the larger organization. And this is going to be important for you to figure out if this is the type of workplace where you're going to thrive. So as you're gathering information, you're going to want to take note so that you can run these things through the filter of your core values. And that's going to help you to understand if you're going to fit in well here or if you're going to be putting yourself at risk for burnout. And the next question I want you to ask, it's going to sound similar to something that you would ask a recruiter in the screening interview, but we're actually looking for slightly different information. And that's when you're trying to find out why they're hiring someone for the general counsel position. And it's in the sense of like, what's missing from the current legal department, or if you're going to be the first GC, what's missing within the organization, within like certain teams. And you can figure this out by asking questions like, what does the legal department need to do to improve? Also, what would leadership like to see changed in the legal department? Also, this is a really important one. Ask if there are any legal issues that are going to require immediate attention. So those are the types of questions that you are going to be wanting to ask to make sure that this role is going to be a good fit for you. But I also want you to know that there are some questions that you definitely should not be asking. Now, of course, These are generally topics for much, much later, probably during the offer stage. But in any of these rounds of interviews that we've been talking about today, you want to avoid asking about typical work week, vacation days, travel commitments, compensation, and you don't want to be asking them questions that are more in the recruiter's domain. And these are questions like, are there any internal candidates for the GC role? Asking about the CEO's current standing with the shareholders and the board. Asking about whether there are any ethical issues with the CEO or the CFO. So that was a lot of information. And really, it's just to give you an idea of what the process entails so that when you do find yourself at the beginning of a general counsel hiring process, you've got a much better idea of what to expect, because it is a really long, protracted, sometimes exhausting process. So I know just even thinking about how long this process can be a little anxiety inducing. So if you're feeling like you could potentially need some support and feedback as you're going through this really long interview process, and potentially multiple interview processes for different GC roles, I want you to check out my 12-month-long program, Make Your Next Move. I've put a link in the description. Now, I put this program together to support lawyers who are going to be involved in a long process and who want support through the entire thing. So it goes from helping you identify where these GC jobs are, helping you to strategically position yourself through your LinkedIn profile, helping you write your resume and cover letters, then of course, supporting you through the interview process all the way through to the job offer and negotiating your compensation. So if that sounds like something you might be interested, check the link in the description. There's a special limited time offer that I put there just for you as well. And check it out. You would not be the first person, the first lawyer to go through the program and to come out on the other side in a general counsel role.